Sir David, thank you very much for being with us this morning, and good morning to you. So just first of all, your reaction to what we're seeing for these next couple of days. I mean, we always feared that we would reach these temperatures, but have we reached them sooner than scientists expected?
If you ask me that question about what scientists expected 10 years ago, the answer is yes. But we have now seen a new weather pattern emerging, which is impacting the whole of the Northern Hemisphere, and it will also impact the Southern Hemisphere. And what I'm talking about here is the fact that the Arctic Circle region has been, over the last 10 years, heating up about 4 times faster than the rest of the planet, which means that the average temperature above the level that existed before we started burning fossil fuels is about 3.5 degrees centigrade above that level. And for the rest of the planet, we're on 1.35 and rapidly approaching 1.5. So this is something we hadn't quite anticipated. The loss of ice over the Arctic Ocean has proceeded much more quickly than any climate scientist predicted. And today, 50% of the Arctic Ocean is exposed to sunlight, and that polar summer brings the sun right through the day. And so what we have is the Arctic Circle region becoming one of the warmer regions of the Northern Hemisphere during the 3 polar summer months. And that is driving the temperatures around the world in a very strange way. It's led by this wind that blows in an anti-clockwise direction around the North Pole. This wind is a strong wind, and it's been blowing in a virtual circle around the North Pole for a long time. It is now severely distorted, and the result of that distortion is all of the extreme weather events we're seeing now. The heat wave we're seeing is coming up from the equatorial region in Africa, through North Africa, through Spain and Portugal. Portugal experiencing temperatures of 47 degrees centigrade. That's a record in Portugal for July. And now this year hitting Britain as well. I think it's critically important to understand that in previous heat waves over the last 3 years, we have managed to escape them, although the highest previous temperature recorded in England was, of course, in Cambridge in 2019, where the temperature of 38.9 degrees centigrade was recorded. So all of this is now predictable, and we have to revise our opinions. These heat waves will repeat themselves and get more severe going forward in time. We're not going to have to wait to the end of the century for that to happen. It's already happening on a regular basis around the Northern Hemisphere.
Sir David, it's bad and it's going to get worse. So that leaves the question, what can we do about it at this stage?
So as emergencies, all of the advice that's being given must be taken. Everyone has to understand even a fit, healthy person is at risk. Our normal body temperature is 37 degrees. Any temperature above 37, even in the shade, is therefore putting us at risk. You're needing to get rid of that excess heat. The way we do this is through perspiration. But if we perspire by dripping, we're not perspiring by evaporating water into the air as water vapor. And we lose all the cooling advantage in that process. The heat required to turn water into vapor is what is taken from your body in that normal perspiration process. But if we start dripping sweat, then it becomes very dangerous. So I think 2 things. 1, stay in a cool place, of course. 2, look for a windy place as well, so that you're getting the wind to blow the perspiration off your body and cool you. And thirdly, if you can get hold of a fan, use a fan to keep yourself cool. Go into the coolest part of the building you're in. If you happen to be in a flat on the top floor of a building with a flat roof above you, that flat is likely to be very hot. You need to perhaps go down into the basement of the building, which will be the coolest place. Many things need to be done.
Sorry to interrupt you, Sir David, but we don't have endless amounts of time, and I did want to get on to a thought about the way that governments are sort of dealing with this. I mean, you will have seen that some of the Conservative Party candidates for leadership want to scrap the net zero targets by 2050. I mean, balances have to be struck, don't they? Tough decisions have to be made. But how concerned are you that the decisions we're making to try and save the environment here perhaps aren't enough and may actually get pushed back and we won't actually meet some of the targets we've set ourselves?
I've been involved in this within government from 2000 until 2017, so I've worked for all 4 prime ministers over that period of time. And frankly, there's a lot of nonsense being talked about this costing our GDP growth if we hit net zero sooner rather than later. We have found that switching across to renewable energy sources such as offshore wind, the most successful of all for Britain, offshore wind, has been a tremendous financial success. It's a wealth maker, not a wealth taker. And at the same time, we're dealing with the major problems. But at the same time, the government needs to grasp the nettle of the importance of public services. National Health Service needs further funding. It's no good just exhorting people to work harder when there's a crisis. It needs further funding. We need our health services properly funded. As the 6th wealthiest nation in the world, here we are with an ambulance service barely operating like it should be operating. And at the same time, we need also to understand that we have a crisis with us now. And it means that we have to prepare to adapt to living in a hotter climate, but we also have to take measures to see if we can somehow refreeze the Arctic, which is the group that I've set up in Cambridge, the Centre for Climate Repair at Cambridge is working on how we might even refreeze the Arctic. If we can do that, then stop these extreme weather events, we're buying time to allow us to reduce emissions deeply and rapidly, and also to remove excess greenhouse gases at scale from the atmosphere. All of the above needs the attention of government. In Britain, we're saying we're going to switch over to electric vehicles. How are we going to do that if we don't see it as a public service, that there are charging points along streets where there's no off-street parking for the people living in those streets? We need a real focus from government on public investment for this public good.
Okay, Sir David King, do really appreciate your time and expertise this morning. Refreezing the Arctic is a fascinating idea. We don't have time to explore it today, but I'm sure we will, perhaps in our climate show at one point. Sir David King, former Special Representative for Climate Change, do appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us.